I never thought I'd be the woman telling this story. Hi, I'm Nora, 34, and I completely shattered my marriage with what I thought was a brilliant idea. Looking back now, I can't believe I was stupid enough to think Miles would ever go for it. But hey, that's what happens when you let your fantasies get the best of you. Miles and I had been together for 8 years, married for 5. He was always the stable one. Dependable, hardworking, the kind of guy who remembers your mom's birthday. Not exactly the most exciting person in the world, but he was mine. Then there was Theo. I've known Theo since before Miles, and there was always this energy between us. Theo was the road not taken. You know, the what if that never quite went away. We all started hanging out together about a year ago when Theo moved back to town. Miles was actually the one who suggested grabbing drinks together that first time. If only he knew what he was setting in motion. I watched them shake hands that night, sizing each other up in that weird way guys do. Miles was polite, but I could tell he picked up on something. Women always know. Between us, I saw the way Theo looked at me when Miles went to get another round. That look said everything. We hung out maybe 5 or 6 times after that. Casual stuff, watching the game, backyard cookouts. Nothing special. But every time there'd be these moments. Theo would say something that referenced our past, and I'd catch myself laughing too hard, or he'd help me grab something from the kitchen, standing just a little too close. Nothing happened. I'm not that kind of girl. But the possibility hung in the air like perfume. I started thinking about Theo more and more, comparing him to Miles, imagining scenarios, just daydreaming, I told myself. Everyone does it. But then I started keeping my phone closer, adding that extra password, closing Snapchat when Miles walked in. Nothing inappropriate was happening. Seriously, just friendly banter. But I knew Miles wouldn't understand the inside jokes or the late night, you up texts that were totally innocent. Well, mostly innocent. The idea came to me after too many wine coolers and a late night scroll through some article about modern relationships. People actually do this sort of thing now. They add a third person to their relationship. It has a fancy name and everything. And I thought, why not? Why choose between stability and excitement when I could have both? I know what you're thinking. This girl is delusional. And maybe I was, but in my head it made perfect sense. Miles gets me most days. Theo gets me sometimes. Everyone's happy. Miles would be the primary, of course, the husband, the provider, the foundation. Theo would just be supplementary, an add-on, a bonus feature. I planned it all out in my head. Miles was always reasonable. He'd see the logic. We'd all be adults about it. Our friend Stacy's cousin was in something similar, and they seemed happy enough from her Instagram. Besides, it's not like I was asking for much. Just a little expansion of our definition of us. Just a little wiggle room in our vows. So, one Friday night, I put on that black dress Miles likes, made his favorite dinner, opened a bottle of the good stuff, and waited for the perfect moment. Looking back, I realize I never once considered that he'd say no, let alone what actually happened. But that's getting ahead of myself. I remember thinking as I poured his second glass of wine that I was about to solve all my problems at once. Have my cake and eat it too, as they say. God, I was such an idiot. The proposition. I'd rehearsed what I was going to say a dozen times in the shower that morning. The words needed to sound casual, like this was just a fun idea I'd been toying with, not something I'd been obsessing over for months. I even practiced my facial expressions in the mirror while Miles was in the garage. Not too eager, not too serious, just curious and open-minded. The table looked perfect that night. Candles, the nice dishes, his favorite lasagna bubbling in the center. I'd even put on makeup for a Friday at home, which should have been his first red flag. Miles came in from work, gave me that tired smile he always has after his long days, and asked what the occasion was. Do I need an occasion to do something nice? I remember saying, all innocent. He kissed my cheek and went to shower. I topped off my wine glass for liquid courage. Dinner went exactly as planned. I let him talk about work, pretended to listen while mentally rehearsing my lines one more time. He was mid-story about some issue with a client when I decided it was time. Honey, I interrupted, reaching for his hand across the table. I've been thinking about us lately. His fork paused halfway to his mouth. That sounds serious. Not serious, just I've been thinking about how to keep things exciting between us. I took another sip of wine. After 8 years together. His expression softened. Poor guy probably thought I was suggesting a vacation or maybe trying some new bedroom stuff. If only. I've been reading about how some couples open things up a bit. I squeezed his hand, trying to look both thoughtful and sexy at once. Not like seeing other people separately, but together. Miles put his fork down. What exactly are you suggesting, Nora? That's when I just said it. No clever lead up. No more buttering him up. What would you think about inviting someone else into our relationship? Like, romantically? The silence that followed felt eternal. Miles stared at me like I just suggested we rob a bank. You want us to have a threesome? He finally asked, his voice unnervingly calm. No. Well, maybe eventually, but that's not what I'm talking about. I rushed to clarify. I mean, an actual relationship, the three of us together. I tried to sound casual, like I was suggesting we try a new restaurant. He took a long drink of water. Do you have someone specific in mind, or is this hypothetical? My heart raced. This was it. Actually, yes. I was thinking maybe, Theo. The way Miles froze told me everything I needed to know, but I kept talking, words tumbling out faster as his expression darkened. He already knows us both. We all get along great, and I just think could be really special. And are you sleeping with him? Miles cut me off, his voice deadly quiet. What? No. God, no. I would never cheat on you. I was telling the truth. Technically, we hadn't slept together, just texted, flirted, dreamed. But you want to, he said flatly. It's not about wanting to sleep with someone else. I lied. It's about expanding our love, trying something new together. Miles just looked at me for a long time. Then he said he needed time to think and went to bed early. I counted that as a win. At least he didn't immediately say no. The next morning, I tried to snuggle up to him, act like everything was normal. He asked me flat out, "How long have you had feelings for Theo?" I should have denied it. Instead, I kissed him and whispered, "It doesn't change how I feel about you," which wasn't an answer at all. The aftermath. Miles didn't come home after work the next day. I tried calling, straight to voicemail, texted, no response. By midnight, I was frantic, spamming his phone, messaging his friends, even calling his workplace. Nobody had seen him. I almost called the police, but something stopped me. Deep down, I knew exactly where he wasn't. Here with me, his wife, who had just suggested bringing another man into our marriage. Around 3 a.m., my phone finally buzzed. A single text. Need space. Safe. Don't call. That's it. 8 years together, and I get 5 words. I spent the next day alternating between fury and panic. How dare he disappear like that? Also, what if something happened to him? Also, was he ever coming back? Also, should I call Theo? I didn't call Theo. Something told me that would make everything infinitely worse. On day 3 of Miles's disappearing act, I heard his key in the lock. I'd been sitting on the couch in the same pajamas for 2 days, staring at my phone. He looked horrible, unshaven, red-eyed, still in his work clothes from 3 days ago. "Where have you been?" I demanded, as if I had the right to be the angry one. "Driving. Thinking." His voice was hoarse. "Stayed at a rest stop outside of town." He sat across from me, not beside me. Bad sign. "Miles, you can't just vanish for days because of one conversation." One conversation. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Nora, you asked if your friend could join our marriage after I've watched you two flirt for months. After you started hiding your phone and changing your passwords. After you started finding every excuse to mention his name. Was I that obvious?" "Apparently. Nothing physical happened," I insisted. "But you wanted to. Don't lie to me, Nora. Not now." I stared at my hands. "It's complicated." "Actually, it's not." Miles stood up. "I spent 3 days thinking about this, and it's very simple. You have feelings for Theo. You want permission to act on them without losing me. You want me to say it's okay so you don't have to feel guilty." Put that way, it sounded awful. That's not. "I'm going to ask you one more time," he said. "And I need the truth. Do you love him?" The question hung in the air between us. I could lie. I should lie. Instead, I whispered, "I love you both." Miles nodded slowly, as if confirming something he already knew. Then he walked to our bedroom. I heard drawers opening, closet doors sliding. When he returned, he had a duffel bag. "What are you doing?" My voice sounded strange, far away. I'm going to stay with my brother in Florida for a while. I need to figure out what I want. Don't leave, I said, finally understanding the magnitude of what was happening. We can talk about this. We can forget the whole thing. Miles looked at me with such sadness that I almost couldn't bear it. That's the problem, Nora. We can't forget it. You can't unfeel what you feel for him, and I can't unhear what you said. As he turned to leave, desperation took over. Remember what we promised before we got married? No cheating, no divorce. Those were our only rules. He paused at the door. Funny how you remember the second rule but forgot the first. I didn't cheat. Didn't you? That he asked quietly and closed the door behind him. I collapsed on the floor, phone in hand, 50 unanswered texts to Miles glowing on the screen, and one new message from Theo. Hey, stranger. Haven't heard from you in a while. Drink soon. I threw my phone across the room. Reflection and justification. 2 weeks passed with no word from Miles beyond a curt text confirming he'd arrived in Florida safely. I'd called out sick from work so many times, they'd stopped asking when I'd return. Most days I just shuffled around our house, our empty, silent house, replaying everything in my head, trying to figure out where exactly it all went wrong. It wasn't fair. I hadn't actually done anything wrong. Having feelings isn't cheating. Being honest about those feelings should count for something, right? I was trying to do the ethical thing by bringing it up rather than sneaking around. Miles was acting like I'd already betrayed him when all I'd done was start a conversation. I tried explaining this to my sister during one of her check-in calls, but even she seemed skeptical. Nora, she said gently, how would you feel if Miles asked to bring some woman into your marriage? That's completely different, I snapped. How? I couldn't quite articulate why, but it just was. I wasn't suggesting replacing Miles. I just wanted more. Was that so terrible? After 3 weeks of silence, I finally broke down and texted Theo. Just casual. Hey, been dealing with some personal stuff. Could use a friend. His response wasn't what I expected. Heard you and Miles are having issues. Probably best if we don't hang out right now. Heard from who? I felt sick. Was Miles talking to Theo? Were our friends discussing us? The humiliation burned worse than the rejection. I scrolled through Miles's Facebook for clues. Nothing. He hadn't posted since before all this happened. But I noticed something worse. In his recent photos, our mutual friends had commented with heart emojis and supportive messages. Hang in there. We love you. Call me if you need anything. No one was sending me those messages. I tried calling one of our couple friends, Amber and Dave. Amber answered, but sounded uncomfortable. Yes, they'd heard something was going on with us. No, she didn't want to take sides. Yes, she'd spoken to Miles. No, she couldn't really talk right now. The walls were closing in. Everyone knew. Everyone was judging me. And worst of all, Theo, the whole reason for this mess, had basically told me to get lost. That night, after too much wine and a sad frozen dinner, I did something I'm not proud of. I texted Miles. I made a mistake. I miss you. Please come home. In the sober light of morning, I regretted it immediately. Not because it wasn't true, I did miss him, but because it felt like surrender. Like admitting I was wrong when I still wasn't convinced I was. My phone remained silent all day. No response. Then, just as I was falling asleep, a reply, I miss you too, but I don't know how to come back from this. Those words gave me hope and crushed me simultaneously. He still cared, but he didn't see a way forward. I spent the next few days constructing the perfect response, something that would bring him home without me having to grovel too much. I settled on, we can work through anything together. What we have is worth fighting for. Send. Wait. Nothing. Days passed. My sister brought groceries because I couldn't face the supermarket where everyone might whisper about me. I started to realize just how much of my life was entangled with Miles. Our friends were really his friends. Our routines were built around his schedule. Even our house felt like it belonged more to him than me, filled with furniture he'd chosen and family photos dominated by his relatives. Without Miles, who was I exactly? And without Theo, who still wasn't answering my increasingly desperate texts, what had this all been for? The awful truth began to dawn on me. I'd gambled everything on a fantasy, and now I might lose it all. Failed reconciliation. 1 month after leaving, Miles texted that he was coming to pick up more of his things. My heart leapt. It was my chance to fix everything. I spent the entire day cleaning, preparing his favorite meal, even putting on makeup for the first time in weeks. If he could just see me, remember what we had together, surely he'd reconsider. The Miles who walked through our door was not the man who had left. He looked healthier, more rested. He'd gotten a haircut, lost a few pounds. Florida agreed with him, apparently. You look good, I said, trying to sound casual and not desperate. Thanks, he replied, his eyes not quite meeting mine. I can't stay long. I made dinner. I gestured toward the kitchen where his favorite lasagna was keeping warm. I thought we could talk, he hesitated. Nora, please, I said, just dinner, that's all. He agreed reluctantly. We sat at our dining table like strangers. I poured wine he didn't drink and served food he barely touched. I've been doing a lot of thinking, I began, carefully rehearsed speech ready. What I suggested was a mistake. I was confused, but I'm not anymore. I want our marriage, just us. Miles looked at me for a long moment. And Theo? Ancient history, I lied. I haven't even spoken to him. That part at least was technically true. He hadn't returned my calls. Interesting, Miles said, because he called me last week. The lasagna turned to cement in my stomach. What? He wanted to apologize. Said you'd been texting him constantly since I left. Said you told him I was completely on board with the three of us being together, but you needed him to convince me directly. My face burned. That's not. I didn't. He showed me the texts, Nora. Silence stretched between us, broken only by the tick of the kitchen clock. I was desperate, I finally whispered. I was trying anything to fix this by lying to both of us. Miles pushed his plate away. I came here today with divorce papers. I was going to ask you to look them over, give you time to get a lawyer. Tears sprang to my eyes. Miles, no. But now I'm not even sure we need to drag this out. He stood up. I'll have them sent to you. I think it's better if we don't see each other again. I followed him to the bedroom where he efficiently packed another suitcase. This couldn't be happening. Not like this. What about our rules? I pleaded. No divorce, remember? We promised. He zipped the suitcase closed. You also promised forsaking all others, if I recall correctly. I didn't cheat on you. You cheated in your heart, Nora. You lied. You manipulated. You tried to change the rules without my consent. His voice was steady, decided. And now you're still lying, even when confronted with proof. As he walked toward the door, panic overwhelmed me. You can't just throw away 8 years. You can't just stop loving someone. Miles paused, his hand on the doorknob. That's the thing. I didn't stop loving you. You stopped loving just me. The door closed behind him with terrible finality. That night, through tears and rage, I did the unthinkable. I posted a vague, self-pitying status on Facebook about people showing their true colors, and sometimes love isn't enough. I tagged Miles in it. Within an hour, I'd lost 20 friends. By morning, I realized Miles had blocked me entirely, and most of our mutual friends had either unfriended me or restricted what I could see. I had officially become the villain in my own story. Karmic consequences. The divorce was finalized 6 months later. I didn't contest anything. Couldn't bear the thought of dragging it out of everyone, knowing even more of our personal business. Miles was surprisingly generous in the settlement, letting me keep the house I could no longer afford on my own. I had to sell it 3 months later, moving into a one-bedroom apartment that echoed with emptiness. Meanwhile, through mutual acquaintances I couldn't quite shake, I heard Miles had gotten a promotion and moved permanently to the Florida office. Theo, unsurprisingly, had completely vanished from my life. The last I heard, he'd moved to another state for a job opportunity. He never once reached out to see how I was doing after everything fell apart. My sister was the only person who still regularly checked on me, though even she had grown tired of my refusal to accept responsibility. You need therapy, Nora, she'd say during our increasingly brief phone calls. You need to understand your part in all this. But what was there to understand? I'd wanted something, been honest about it, and everyone had abandoned me for it. If anything, I was the victim here. Until the holiday party at my new workplace changed everything. I'd been there about a year, finally starting to rebuild some semblance of a life. The company culture was big on partners attending events, and I'd managed to dodge questions about my relationship status until then. But that night, as I stood alone by the dessert table, my boss approached with his wife and another couple. Nora, Have you met our new regional director? He just transferred from our Florida office. I turned, plastic smile ready, and froze. Miles stood there, his arm around a petite brunette who looked at him with undisguised adoration. We've met, Miles said smoothly. No trace of emotion, betraying our history. Nice to see you, Nora. The brunette, his new wife, I would later learn, smiled warmly and extended her hand. I'm Ellie. Miles never mentions knowing anyone from the home office. What a small world. I mumbled something appropriate, excused myself, and spent the next 20 minutes locked in a bathroom stall, hyperventilating. Miles was now my boss's boss. Miles was happily remarried. Miles looked better than ever while I was still single, still struggling, still stuck. Over the following months, I was forced to watch from the periphery as Miles thrived. His new wife was universally adored at company events. They bought a house in the nicest neighborhood. He received another promotion that required me to occasionally report directly to him. Always professional, always distant, as if we'd never shared a life. Eventually, I couldn't take it anymore. I applied for a transfer to our Seattle office, as far away as possible within the company. Miles approved it immediately, of course. His final email simply read, "Request granted. Best wishes for your future endeavors." As I packed up my apartment for the second time in 2 years, I found our old wedding album buried in a box I'd never fully unpacked. Flipping through it, I barely recognized the smiling woman in white. She looked so certain, so unaware of how thoroughly she would destroy her own happiness. My phone buzzed with a text from my sister. Call when you're settled in Seattle. Maybe this fresh start is exactly what you need. A fresh start. As if I could outrun the consequences of my actions. As if Miles hadn't already shown me exactly how a fresh start was supposed to look, complete with actual growth and happiness, not just a change of scenery. The truth I still couldn't fully admit, even to myself, was that I'd had everything I needed and thrown it away for a fantasy that never existed. Miles had moved on and found genuine happiness. Theo had never really wanted me. And here I was alone, about to start over in a city where I knew no one, working at the same company where everyone knew my ex-husband was thriving without me. Sometimes at night, I still catch myself wondering, what if I'd never asked that question? What if I'd been satisfied with the good man who loved me? What if I'd recognized the value of what I had before testing its limits? But those questions, like so many others, come too late to matter anymore. If this confession kept you hooked, make sure to subscribe, like, and share. We share powerful true stories every day that explore the complex realities of life.